gets late out here, but I made Mike Watka stick around with me. Mike, you've been circling through the crowds a little bit. The mood is joyous. People are pretty surprised, but pretty excited and very optimistic and ready for this to be over.
Well, these folks don't want to leave. I mean, I think they want this called. You were mentioning that this crowd was they're shouting, call it, call it. I think these folks are hunkered down. They smell victory, and they're not about to let this moment pass. They want to stay in this room. They want the people up there, the pundits on television, to say Donald Trump is the next president of the United States. And until that happens, I'm not certain any of these. They may need some more hotel rooms here because these folks aren't going home. I think they really want to see a conclusion to this tonight. And obviously, this partisan crowd, they want to hear that Donald Trump is the president-elect.
When I came in earlier, I was talking to the public information officer for the GOP, and we both thought that if Arpaio lost tonight, this room would deflate immediately. Well, he lost, and we were both wrong because this room is as crowded as it's been all evening.
Absolutely. And Joe Arpaio, amazingly, has become sort of a footnote in tonight. I mean, it's a big deal, and it's going to get a headline. But for the crowd here tonight, the very strong showing of Donald Trump in so many so-called battleground states that aren't so much battlegrounds, he's going to, he's on the verge of seizing the White House. And these folks are as elated about that, and they really want to savor this moment. They don't want it to go away, and they want to hear the folks up on the screen admit what they see as the inevitable outcome. And perhaps there was some surprise tomorrow morning and in the couch, but it certainly looks like it's going Mr. Trump's way, and this crowd wants to hear it from that television screen.
They want to hear those words because for how many weeks we've been just talking about, could Arizona go blue? And there was so much talk about that. We had Hillary Clinton here, Chelsea, Michelle Obama had that big rally downtown. Tim Kaine had the rally where he spoke Spanish, the first vice presidential candidate to speak Spanish. Bernie Sanders was just here over the weekend.
Lost repeatedly in court, and in doing so created some very negative precedent for not only his administration but future administrations. So it didn't turn out all that well. But this bill has come due for Democrats. They supported the president when he said he would go it alone. And our system really doesn't have license for people to go it alone. But it's going to be difficult for the Democrats to object to a President Trump who wants to use the same powers. And in the hearings that I testified before in Congress, I would remind members that President Obama would not be our last president. And I do think that now Democrats are going to have to do some soul searching if they object to those same powers being used by a President Trump. They risk being called hypocrites.
Walk us through, just remind us of some of the executive orders that Barack Obama tried. Obviously on immigration and Obamacare, those are the two biggies that come to mind.
Well, those are the big ones. The interesting thing about immigration is that the president sought the changes that he ultimately put through executive authority, and those changes were not accepted by Congress. And what was a very curious moment is he had a State of the Union address where he told Congress that because they would not give him the reforms that he had asked, he intended to circumvent that. And in one of the most curious moments, at least of my life as a constitutional scholar, half of Congress stood up and applauded the notion that they were going to be made obsolete. That's something I think James Madison would have been found quite curious. I mean, he didn't believe that that type of moment would come to pass. But in various areas, everything from internet gambling to healthcare, as you mentioned, to No Child Left Behind, there's all of these areas the president decided that he would act unilaterally. And the thing about our system is the reason we don't have that option is you only have two choices as president. You either change Congress or you change their minds. Now, if you can't do either, not much gets done in a country that's divided. So I think that he did hurt his legacy, and I think that he alienated many people who felt that his acting unilaterally deprived them of some of their representational authority through Congress.
Hey, Jonathan, it's Bret Baier. Just wondering your thoughts on the decision by Mitch McConnell to hold up moving forward with Merrick Garland and any hearings for the Supreme Court. Politically, it seemed a risky move at the beginning. Now, after Governor Mike Pence on the trail talked a lot about the Supreme Court choices to come, and we see the numbers on evangelicals coming out, potentially because of SCOTUS picks down the road. Your thoughts on how that all played out?
Well, I expect that Judge Garland was watching tonight's developments with particular interest. You know, it's not a good thing in Washington when everyone says nice things about you. And I think that's been the situation with Judge Garland. He is a very well-respected jurist. He is not likely to be renominated, obviously, by President Trump, if that comes about. He might not even be renominated by a President Clinton. So the question now as we go forward, you have one vacancy, but there's also 3 justices who are in their advanced years, and they might retire or leave the court. That means that the next president, and it could be a President Trump, could really influence the court literally for decades. I mean, if you're talking about 3 or 4 of a 9-member court, that's going to have the most pronounced effect perhaps in the history of this country on the outcome of various doctrines and rules. Remember, we have a lot of major cases that are really balanced by 1 vote. It's a 5-4 split. So to replace that number of justices could rewrite the law in this country.
Clearly, some cases this session were 4-4 that would have went the other way if Antonin Scalia was still alive.
That's right. And in some cases, it sort of broke even. You know, in some cases, the left won, in some cases, the right won. But this level of change in the membership of the court is almost unprecedented in this country. I say almost because many people don't realize that our court has been of different sizes. We actually have had 10 justices. We've had as few as 6 justices. The number of justices is not set out in the Constitution. It's a matter for Congress to ultimately decide. But I don't think any president in modern history could have the type of impact that a President Trump or President Clinton could have.
That's true, given the number of potential vacancies we're likely looking at. Professor Jonathan Turley, great to see you.
Thank you.
We are getting word now that that Donald Trump has arrived at his campaign headquarters just up the road here at the Hilton on 6th Avenue in Manhattan. What will he do? Will he speak? Will he come out? Will
Sean
he say,
Spicer
stand
tweets,
by till tomorrow?
Trump about to take the stage at the Hilton in New York. Let's go to Carl Cameron and see what he knows.
Will he come out? Sean stand by till tomorrow?
Trump about to take we can hear ourselves, but there's no Carl.
That Carl's hit was a little underwhelming.
Yeah. All right, let's take a... is he coming on the stage now? Do we know? Okay, so we just want to say hi to everybody, and that there's Carl Cameron.
All right,
there. Carl, can you hear me? Okay, so we just want to say hi to everybody, and that...
All right, we're having technical difficulties here. Don't worry, we're not going to let you miss Trump or whoever it is that's going to come out on this stage and speak to Trump supporters. But we're trying to get the lay of the land to find out whether we actually do expect him to do it. Now, as you know, Mr. Trump is not shy about going in front of the cameras. And he certainly was one of the most successful reality TV shows in modern American history. So perhaps he will seize the moment to come out and do things his own way, which has been his way, right? He doesn't care how people did it before. Why else would he have gone over there from Trump Tower, understanding the situation here? And Trump Tower is not that far away from the Hilton.
So we are going to stick around. Let's go, Dana, your thoughts about what he may be doing here.
Well, I was just thinking that for the last 18 months, every time I give what I think is really sound advice, it's like, yeah, you are so 2008 and no longer needed. Yeah, so maybe it's just different and refreshing. Maybe he comes out and he says, imagine for a second if the shoe were on the other foot and I was the one that was not conceding at this point, what the media would be doing, and then just go on down that road like he's been. I mean, that is an option to him. Maybe he'll do something like that tonight. Plus, I think also he has genuine affection and appreciation for the people who are gathered there. Yeah. They believed in him from the beginning. They want to celebrate tonight. I remember what it was like.
truth, and his voters the truth, is we have a choice. We're either part of a global economy or we're not.
You know, and you make up an important point there, and Tommy, I'm going to bring this to you. We just heard a tweet from Sean Spicer, top strategist for the RNC, saying Donald Trump will take the stage soon. Donald Trump also runs pretty large business in dozens of countries all around the world, says he's going to have his children continue to run the president is not bound by conflict of interest rules, but there's he would be entangled, and his businesses would be entangled with a lot of foreign interests and foreign leaders who would seek to influence.
Yeah, and what are the laws on the books with that? I saw a tweet from Donald Trump Jr. today, and the tweet was 2 hours ago, and it was, "This is so intense, this is so surreal." And I thought the same thing. Well, you just inherited his father's company. Now him and Eric Trump are going to be running this along with Ivanka, who has her own line. But is there a law that says that Donald Trump can't still have his hand in his businesses because he plays by his own rules? He's done it with his campaign. You know, there's something, a rule, and it's not on the books, it's not a law, but it's for transparency. The press travels with the candidate. Every presidential candidate does it. It's something very simple. We just sit on the plane so we can look at the candidate to make sure everything's okay and he doesn't flop over. Donald Trump said, forget that. I'm going to fly on my big plane. You take the small plane. And many times he would start his events with us without us even being there. And so it's a small thing, but it shows he plays by his own rules.
It was suggesting that it would be Donald Trump who would be refusing to concede, refusing to accept the legitimacy of the election, mobilizing the cadre of lawyers and the airlift of attorneys to various different rural parts of half a dozen swing states to litigate the possible results. Now the question is whether or not that's what the Clinton campaign is doing. So I think we can expect Mr. Trump to make an
Trump's campaign and his apparent, not yet, apparent election, does it normalize a totally different standard of leadership and candidacies in this country? Does it normalize it?
And Charlie Gibson, I want to bring this question to you because I think we've seen both when individuals, all been men so far, enter the White House. We can see that the White House, the pressures of the White House can enhance the flaws of individuals, but can also ennoble them at times, and it's a big unanswered question with Donald Trump.
That's a $64 question, I think, in this case. You know, talking about the elites, Alex, you were talking about what the elites may be seen as having privileges that others don't, and that this has been a rebellion against. I can't imagine that there aren't some concerns about elites who don't pay taxes and take $1 billion deduction and then don't pay taxes for 19, 20 years. Apparently that doesn't matter. I would hope, you hope, that this will end. But when I say we're in uncharted waters, I don't think we have a clue how this is going to affect.
And I want to bring this because we were talking about this earlier, but we didn't have JD here. How does